through the 12 steps, I learned that there was a power greater than myself, that I could define how I wanted it to be. And man, that was the ticket. I like that. But I'm not going to say that it filled the empty hole in my soul. And I'm not going to say that I felt peace or that I felt comfortable in my own skin, because I didn't. Some very emotionally heavy times happened in my life. So I decided that Judaism was going to be the answer. I had gotten friendly with a rabbi and was going to Shabbatons and so forth. And he said, would you like to go to yeshiva in Israel? And I was like, yeah. They really weren't open to my questions. They were really just trying to tell me what to think. And then Jesus just starts popping up. I'm just seeing him all over. I'm like, well, that sounds like Jesus. Well, that sounds like Jesus. Well, that sounds like Jesus. And then finally, I'm like, I totally get it. Jesus is real. If I believe that Moses parted the Red Sea, then I have to believe that Jesus is the Son of God. I can't separate the two.
What's up, everyone? I'm so excited today because we are joined by Joyce, Dorian, host of the Bridge podcast, which is focused on bridging the gap between Jews and Christians. She is a Jewish believer in Jesus. And after spending much of her life on a New Age spiritual path, everything changed when she read the Bible for the first time and discovered that Jesus, Yeshua, is the promised Messiah. Wow. As a Jewish believer, she's now passionate about helping Christians understand the Jewish roots of their faith and God's ongoing covenant with the Jewish people. I love it. And she's a retired teacher, domestic violence advocate. Joyce brings wisdom and compassion to conversations that help build understanding between Jews and Christians. We need this so desperately today. Joyce, Dorian, thank you so much for being here, and welcome to Highway 53.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm so excited to be here as well and share my story with everyone, because I hope it's a story that shares hope.
I'm sure it will. And you mentioned while we were talking that you're from Brooklyn, one of the most Jewish cities in the United States.
Yes, Brooklyn was very, very Jewish, although I grew up only knowing Brooklyn. So, but the area that I lived in was very Jewish, Irish, Italian. And you know what was interesting also is where I grew up, to me, everybody was Catholic or Protestant. It wasn't until many decades later when I moved to the South that I heard the term Christian. I never heard people refer to themselves as Christians. You were Catholics or you were Protestant in New York. And I grew up, there was a lot of angst toward Jews. I did grow up hearing, oh, the Jews killed Jesus, but my friends would say, but you're a good Jew, but you're a good Jew. So I grew up with a lot of my friends that were Catholic and Protestant. My neighborhood growing up was very, very mixed. But I always grew up in a neighborhood, in an area where you did get off for school for Rosh Hashanah. The schools were closed for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So, and I just thought that was normal. Like, we had 2 sets of dishes and silverware growing up. And
So your family kept kosher?
we all kosher-ish, but like we would go out for Chinese food and it was okay to bring the leftovers home because we shouldn't waste food. And it was never really explained to me like why we kept kosher. It was just like, we just did that. So then when I was in other people's homes and saw that they didn't do that, I didn't really even understand that. And similar to you, I went to Sunday school and learned stories, learned how to make potato pancakes, learned how to make matzo balls. I still make a really good matzo ball soup, but really never read the Bible. But I did grow up hearing fear of God, fear God, fear God. And that never sat well with me. And I just grew up thinking like, why should I believe a God that I need to fear? So I grew up with this hole in my soul, feeling empty, knowing that there was more, wanting more, but not feeling like I was getting it from Judaism. And also for me, my parents split up when I was 12, and my dad moved out and the bacon moved in. And so any connection to Judaism was completely gone at that point. And I was just kind of searching, and definitely searching in the secular world, in the metaphysical New Age world, which landed me eventually deeply into A Course in Miracles. Now, I will say, though, prior to that, I had gotten involved in 12 steps. So it was the 1980s. Codependence Anonymous had just started. Melody Beattie's work was big. John Bradshaw's work was really big. We're all carrying around our inner child dolls. And, at the restaurants, we've got our dolls sitting with us. And, we're doing all this healing work, which in many ways, really, I can't say that it was terrible. I don't want to say bad things about it because I really got a lot out of it. I did learn, I did grow, I did do a lot of healing, and I did learn about God through the 12 steps. I learned that there was a power greater than myself, that I could define how I wanted it to be. And man, that was the ticket. I like that. I could define what I wanted this power greater than myself to be. And I did lean in on that, and it did help. But I'm not going to say that it filled the empty hole in my soul. And I'm not going to say that I felt peace or that I felt comfortable in my own skin, because I didn't. I just didn't feel as depressed as I was before. So then I find A Course in Miracles and I deep dive into that, and I'm loving it. And I wrote a book on it, and I'm doing presentations and life coaching. And again, I'm feeling better, doing good. And I'm there for years. And I got very into natural health. And a friend of mine who was in that with me, she and I used to go out to lunch a lot and do things together. And I knew she was Christian, because now I'm living in Georgia. I went from New York to Florida to Georgia. So now I'm in Georgia, which that was scary to move to, because what I had grown up knowing about Georgia is, well, that's the South, where they, don't like blacks and Jews. And, so I checked it out and thought, okay, it might be safe to come here. Things have changed. And I came, and Georgia has been wonderful for me and my family. So yay to seeing seasons change, because I raised my
Yes.
children in Florida. So that was a lovely thing. So now I'm sitting with this friend of mine, and for years, and she's talking about Jesus. And I'm, of course, in my mind, she's wrong. She needs to know the Jesus that I know through A Course in Miracles.
Right,
Yes.
right. Because they teach you about a form of Jesus in the
Yes.
Course of Miracles, but it's not the biblical Jesus. Tell us about that
Right.
real
Right.
quick.
Yeah. So, in A Course in Miracles is a spiritual self-psychology program. And so they're saying that Jesus came to the author of the Course in Miracles and she channeled Jesus in writing it. And I will say there are a lot of good things in it that I got out of it, but it is clearly saying that Christianity got it wrong, and that Jesus is no different than the rest of us. He is just fully aware that he, of his potential, and that he is the Son of God, and that we don't know that yet. And that if we strive to be like him, we can attain that. So, so there were some things that I got out of it that were really good and really helped me not be as depressed. But again, still not comfortable in my own skin, still, dealing with some, low level depression, and feeling like there's an emptiness in my soul, but just trying to lean in onto that, because it was making things definitely less bad. And I thought that I was helping people with what I was doing.
Yeah, I get that. That's the tendency to go into these practices and think, well, now I'm the source that people can come to for help. But
Yes.
before we get into the Bible study that you were invited to, were you ever exposed to or interested in what I call, or what we call, rabbinic Judaism as it's practiced today?
I did go through a period of that too. So when I was 17, some very, 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 very emotionally heavy times happened in my life. And so I decided that Judaism was going to be the answer. And so I was going to Shabbatones. And, I was living in Brooklyn at the time. I had gotten friendly with a rabbi, and was going to Shabbatones and so forth. And he said, would you like to go to yeshiva in Israel? And I was like, yeah. So I had already spent a summer in Israel at 16. And what an amazing trip. The Sinai was still part of Israel then, so I got to go out to Mount Sinai. I got to swim at Ras Mohammed, which is the water was purple. Nueva Shemarshek. Got to see these beautiful, beautiful things and have these incredible experiences. So when he said, "Would you like to go to yeshiva in Jerusalem?" I was like, "Sure, let's do that." But I will say, I lasted a day in yeshiva. They were doing a lesson on free will and saying that we have no free will whatsoever, and God has a predestined plan for us that we have to follow. And they really weren't open to my questions. They were really just trying to tell me what to think. So that was me. I was done with the class, but I got to stay in the apartment for, about 4 or 5 months, and I got to go there for lunch on the days that I was home. So I spent the about 4 or 5 months in Israel, just exploring, babysitting, trying Ulpan unsuccessfully. Yeah.
Ulpan, for those who don't know what it is, it's basically Hebrew school here in Israel, where you learn actual spoken Hebrew, modern Hebrew.
Yes, but it's
Yeah,
kind of on steroids. You go in there
me
and
too.
there,
It's
yeah. I mean,
yeah,
I don't have a gift for languages. Some people have a gift for languages, but many people have been successful. But I think I was also a lazy, spoiled American.
gotcha,
And,
gotcha.
and
Yeah, I went to Ulpan, and I was 25. I went to Ulpan, first time in Israel, and you're right. The teachers wouldn't speak English on the first day, and I'm like, I don't understand what you're saying, and you expect me to learn this way, but I was kind of like a nerd. So I went full on. I was studying, I don't know, 25 hours a week, but then I went to private lessons after
wow, okay.
as well from the little old grandma of the kibbutz and everything. It was really fun, but I got a lot out of it. And since then, I've been living in Israel most of the time, so I picked it up. But man, it's tough to learn Hebrew like that. But there's no better way, I think.
It is probably the best way to do it. But as I said, spoiled, lazy American, all the street signs were in English. Everybody in Israel spoke English.
Right.
So there wasn't really this great motivation to learn it.
Yeah. So,
Yes.
so you lived in Israel. You had experience with religious Judaism, and now where are you?
So now I leave Israel. I come home and found my drug of choice, which was men, and got sadly, I've had many relationships. I'm divorced 3 times, and thinking that the right relationship would fill the hole in my soul, and of course, it didn't, and created its own mixed bag of problems. So I stayed with that and just trying a whole lot of different New Age things: Buddhism, tarot cards, the runes, crystals, numerology, psychics, all of that, thinking that that was the answer. And then when I found A Course in Miracles, which was while I was living in Florida, when I found actually the 12 steps, that really made a big difference in my healing and not being as depressed. But then I moved into from there A Course in Miracles, and I landed there for a very, very long time. I thought that was it. And I thought, I just got to keep leaning into it and things will get better. I went from being very depressed to having low level depression. I went from being unhappy to being mostly happy. I went from being someone who was very angry to someone who wasn't angry. So it really did help. So I don't want to say that it didn't, because it did shift my mind a lot. And but I still wasn't comfortable in my own skin. And I was very uncomfortable being alone, and I was still looking for something to I still needed something to make me really okay.
So when Course of Miracles runs its course, I guess you could say, what happens next?
You meditate more, you lean in more, you pray more, and you're supposed to get more peace from like meditating more. You're supposed to be emptying your mind, And you're supposed to empty your mind. You're supposed to meditate at night before you go to bed to empty your mind from the day. You're supposed to meditate in the morning to ask, God to fill you. And you're supposed to really be holding on to some of the exercises and to some of the mindset changes. So you have to keep doing it more to, I guess, achieve.
Take me to where you started to become introduced to the real Jesus.
So I'm sitting with my Christian friend for years, having conversations. And I'm, of course, talking to her about the Course in Miracles because I'm trying to convince her that her idea of Jesus is wrong and that mine is right. And she is just loving on me, not judging me, not arguing with me, just, just almost ignoring what I'm saying and changing, because we didn't meet to talk about Jesus. We were meeting to talk about natural health, essential oils, other things. We just somehow always got into a topic like that. But she just, I think, lovingly humored me. Now looking back. And then one day she said to me, "Hey, I'm doing this year-long Bible study. Would you like to join us?" And I thought, I've read everything else. I've looked at everything else. Why not? And so we did it. And it was Tara Lee Cobble's The Bible Recap. I started it in January of 2021. And, so we're reading the passage for the day and then listening to the commentary. And the first thing that really struck me early on in the Old Testament was when Tara Lee explained the fear of God, because remember, the fear of God was the thing that turned me away from God. And she's saying that in Hebrew, fear means awe, AWE. And I was like, wow, really? Well, that makes sense. If God is all that great, I should be in awe. So now I'm approaching it with a totally different mindset. Like bricks are falling off my shoulders. My eyes are opening wider. And there's just more and more and more revelation like that. So I'm not seeing Jesus yet. I'm just seeing, oh, maybe this is for real. Maybe the Bible is real. Maybe these stories from my history, from my lineage are actually real. So now I'm reading it and absorbing it and accepting the Bible is real. But so far I'm still just on, okay, Judaism is real. And then Jesus just starts popping up. I'm just seeing him all over. And I'm like, well, that sounds like Jesus. Well, that sounds like Jesus. Well, that sounds like Jesus. So, and I'm having like experience like that over and over. And I'm talking with my friend all the time about this. And so I'm going in with this assumption that because she's a Christian, she knows everything about the Bible. She knew nothing. And she's going in with this assumption that because I'm Jewish, I knew everything about the Bible, and I knew nothing. So there we are, learning together and digging in together and totally loving it. And by time it was before Isaiah, I don't even remember which passage it was, but I'm telling her, this sounds like Jesus. And she's like, yeah, it kind of does. And she's still not pressing hard. She's still just like, yeah, I can see why you see that. And then finally, I'm like, I totally get it. Jesus is real. And my thing that I said is, if I believe that Moses parted the Red Sea, then I have to believe that Jesus is the Son of God. I can't separate the two. They're just part of the same story. I just can't separate it. And the more I read, the more I learned, the more I saw him. And I was just solid. Jesus is real. He is the Jewish Messiah. So now 2021 ends. I'm not going to church yet. I'm just doing this with her. And I've accepted Jesus. And she says to me, hey, we're doing it again next year. Do you want to join us? And I'm thinking, well, I accepted Jesus. I just read it. Why would I do it again? I'm thinking, this chick is crazy. Why would I do it again? I just read it. I just finished it. So I said no. And now I've moved and I've made a very close friend. And she says, why don't you come to church with me? And I said, well, I'm Jewish. I can't go to church. And she laughed and dragged me with her. And I'm still afraid to tell anybody that I'm Jewish because I had a lot of negative experiences growing up in New York with people who knew that I was Jewish. And I'm around all these Christian people and I'm terrified of Christian people because I always lived in Jewish areas. So she invited me to her small group. And again, well, I'm Jewish, I can't go. And I went, she dragged me and I went, and everybody just totally embraced me and just loved on me and fully accepted me. And then at the church that I was going to, where I was living at the time, the Ridge in Blue Ridge, Georgia, they're a phenomenal teaching church. And I just started like really taking these courses and deep diving into it, and just, stop being afraid to share my story. And then October 7th happened, and the Lord laid on my heart, you need to go move and be near your children and your grandchildren. And that move happened like that. Just everything totally fell in place. And the Lord laid on my heart that it was for me to help bring my children to the Lord. And so I've been over here, and I'm still praying on that. There's been, I've made a couple of chips in the wall, I think, but I can't fully say that I've achieved my goal, answered prayer yet. But I'm steadily praying, and my prayer life has just, oh my gosh, grown and changed so much since the first day I met the Lord. It's incredible, the growth, and the closeness, and how comfortable I am in my own skin now, how at peace I am, how okay I am being alone. I don't need to chase anything or anyone to make me feel whole, to make me feel complete. I'm just okay. I'm at peace and I feel safe. And now I'm in a space of actually like almost so like I'm in a spiritual warfare Bible study with some women. And last night I was saying, I have moments of catching myself feeling peaceful and almost like, oh, is this okay? Should I be doing X, Y, and Z? Should I be jumping through this hoop? Should I be doing this more? And I'm like, no, it's okay for me to feel fully safe and secure in the Lord's love. I don't have to jump through all of these hoops and all of these things that I'm doing. My prayer life, my reading, my studying, my courses. I'm not doing any of it because I have to. I'm doing it because I get to. I'm doing it because I want to. I'm doing it because I love the Lord. I know that if I didn't do it, he would love me just as much. But learning, oh my gosh, what a joy that is.
Joyce, what a beautiful story. What's been the hardest thing for you about being a Jewish believer in Jesus?
Oh my goodness. I weep over seeing Christians who have hate in their heart for Jews,
Mm,
and weep over seeing Christians who are confused about the role of the Jewish people, or have angst or animosity toward the Jewish people in their heart. Christians who are believing lies about the Jewish people, lies about Israel. I weep over that. I
mm,
weep over um, Jewish people who have no idea, who they also are been told wrong information being withheld from them. And this just, it breaks my heart. And I think from those feelings, the Lord put the burden on my heart to start a podcast, to be another voice. There's nothing special about what I'm doing. There's nothing special about my voice. It's just another voice echoing the same thing, another voice sharing the Lord's the Lord's heart.
Yeah, I'd say it is special. And if you're watching this, go to the Bridge podcast on YouTube. You have a YouTube channel, and
Yes.
show Joyce some love over there. Follow her, subscribe, show her some support. And that's a huge cause to be a part of right now, to unite Jew and Gentile, because that's what the God of Israel has always been about. And that's what Jesus has always been about. So if your mindset is divisive and you're pointing at them and us, then something is drastically missing with regards to your faith and your understanding of why Jesus even came. The story of the people of Israel has always been put on display for the world to see. So for thousands of years now, we have the nation of Israel's story and thoughts and deeds and actions being put on display for the world to see. And it's easy to look at that and point the finger. But put yourself in that picture. Put your thoughts, motives, actions, behaviors, all of it onto a screen for the world to see, and it's continually running 24/7, generation after generation. Would you really be the hero? And I think most people know in their hearts that obviously not, and it wouldn't have turned out any different had it been another people group. And so I admire you for what you do. I'm so grateful for your story, and that Jesus was the one that filled the hole. I think for people like us who went into New Age trying to find peace and joy, that we would remove things from our life, thinking that the absence of all these things would bring us peace. But Jesus says, come to me and I will give you rest. The presence of Jesus is the one that gives us peace, because life is hard anyway. It's hard with him. It's hard without him. But with him, he holds our hand, he guides us through, and he gives us eternal life. And so you can only win. Life's going to be hard anyway. So I'm so grateful. What kind of advice would you give to Jewish people watching this, that they might be interested in Jesus, but they're afraid? They don't want to become a Christian because they think they don't understand what that means, or they want to stay Jewish. What kind of advice would you give them?
Well, for me, finding Jesus, accepting Jesus, following Jesus, I feel is the most Jewish thing I could possibly do. I have leaned in so much deeper to my Jewish heritage, my Jewish faith, Jewish traditions since I found Jesus. I was totally devoid of anything that had really to do with any Jewish knowledge, other than I would do Hanukkah, I would do Passover, but that's all I ever did before. And except for those 2 days out of the year, I never thought about Judaism. So I am so much more Jewish now. My advice to somebody Jewish who's listening is, don't be afraid. Open the book. Matthew starts with the Jewish lineage. It's the most Jewish thing possible. Jesus teaches in parables. It's the most Jewish thing possible. And it's a Jewish book. And yes, there has been division between Jew and Christian. There is angst, but actually, in many ways, we're coming full circle. And that in itself is changing. So don't be afraid of it, but also go slow. There is no rush. It doesn't have to happen overnight. It was a process for me, and it's an ongoing, continual process. But if you have questions, don't leave those questions unanswered. You owe it to yourself to actually investigate, open the book, because it won't hurt you if you open it. As a whole group, I think, that have turned toward New Age and spirituality, or seekers or searchers, or people who know that there's something missing, who know that there's more. There's so many Jews that are turning to that because there's a missing piece. This is the missing piece, the PIECE and the PEACE. So I pray that you will open the book and look.
So well said. Joyce, Dorian, thank you so much for joining me here today on Highway 53. Everyone out there, go to the Bridge podcast on YouTube. Go show Joyce some love. Go support her, follow her, ask her some questions, watch her videos, watch her interviews, leave comments for her, and reach out to us here as well at Highway 53. Joyce, thank you so much for joining us. May God continue to bless you and grow you. And thanks again.
Thank you so much, Jeff.